Three, two, one, and action.
Adam Sigelman, welcome at the Goodfolks podcast. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for considering me, I guess, a good folk.
Well, we only bring the good folks. I mean, we've been talking about doing this interview for a long time, like doing this podcast, and it's a pleasure to have you here and talk to you. You're one of the stars at the new embassy staff, who are running social media and doing a lot of videos, dressing Algerian culture in a way that I think that the embassy team never did before, like in the past years. And it's also very unique in comparison with other embassies in Algeria. There are a lot of embassies representing different countries, but only the US embassy are the ones who are like connecting with the people in a way that the Algerian people were not used to. How does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, let me say I don't consider myself one of the stars, I think. Paul and Salman are really, so I'm like a bit player, I'm one of the role players who comes in every now and then. But really the kudos go to Paul and his team and Salman as well. I mean, I think they're the creative force behind what we do on social media, and I'm just happy I get the chance now and then to make a cameo. But, I think what we do on social media, and I was in charge of our social media accounts when I worked at the Consulate General in Jerusalem, which was the representation we had to the Palestinian people. And, I think what we do it is different. I'm not going to compare us to other embassies and what they do, because everyone's got their own style and their own goals. But I also think it's very American. I think when you think about American culture, and American people, we don't like to put people on pedestals. So yeah, sure, we're all diplomats and that can be considered prestigious or whatever. But I think when you find a lot of Americans, we don't want to be called sir, we don't want to be called by our last names, we don't want the monsieur or the Sayyid or whatever. We like to be called by our first names, and we like to show that we're just like everybody else. And you even see that even if you look at like the U.S. elections or what have you. It's very common to see people who are running for elected office in the United States, dress normally, talk normally, try to show that they're normal people with a sense of humor, do fun videos. And so I think that not only are we trying to connect and we're trying to be entertaining and we're trying to get the word out about what we're doing, but that's also, in my mind, part of what it is to be American and part of us sharing our own culture.
Yeah, that's actually something I noticed when I studied in the U.S. So I went to the U.S. on SUSI program, or a summer program for 5 weeks. And we were at the University of Connecticut. I remember that there was a teacher we had there, and he used to tell us, like, please don't call me sir, call me just Jack. Don't call me Mr. Barry, don't call me Barry, just Jack. And that was really new to me, because here in Algeria, I think that most of us Algerians were used to thinking that it's like a sign of respect when you call someone you don't know as Monsieur, Mr. Sayyid, So in the US, it's totally different. You make people really uncomfortable when you tell them Mr. or Sir or whatever. So they prefer just being called. And even professors who have really good knowledge, they know that they are a big deal at the university, but they just want to socialize with normal people just like any other person, And I just don't know where this is coming from. Does it have to do like with the U.S. culture, like a U.S. history, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I do think that it has to do with our culture and our history. As a country of immigrants, where you had everybody kind of coming in at the same social strata. And I also just think culturally, for Americans, I don't want to give the impression that we're a classless culture. Of course, there are classes, socioeconomic classes in the United States, as you'll find in any capitalist society, but it's not considered appropriate to point out those differences. Sure, you can tell. I mean, you can tell just by looking at somebody's clothes or maybe by the way they talk, you can get ideas, maybe, okay, that person's from this class or that class. But it's not considered appropriate in American culture to point that out or to do things that would show a differentiation between you and somebody else class-wise. And I think that's part of it, you know? We all want to, even if there are known subconsciously or consciously known class differences, we at least want to give the impression that they don't exist. But this also maybe goes beyond that in the sense that, you know, Americans are very chatty. They like to get to know you. They like to create connections right away. And when you have the Sayyid, or you have the Monsieur, or at least in our culture, in Americans, when you add that Sir, you're automatically just creating a distance right away. And so a lot of Americans, not all of them, and some Americans still like to use those titles or their last names, but a lot of Americans say right away, no, please, call me Adam.
That's really cool. I mean, when the first time you started working as a diplomat, were you uncomfortable when, like, I don't know, like you go to places like in special cars and you're around like special people, and maybe you don't get to interact with the general public much, and people maybe feel a little bit shy to approach you and talk to you. Like from Adam, like just in America, the American Adam, and now the diplomat who's working in foreign countries. Like how was that different to you?
Yeah. So let me preface by saying I've spent my entire career, with one exception, in the Arab world. I started as the cultural attaché, like I am now, in Yemen. Then I was in Madrid. That's the one exception. Then I was in Jerusalem as the press attaché. And then I spent a year in Morocco studying Arabic. And now I'm here as a cultural attaché. And I will tell you that I don't think, at least in the Arab world, people are shy about approaching me. I haven't had people get nervous. People like to talk to Americans, and they like to talk to diplomats too, I think. I do feel uncomfortable sometimes, not as much here. Here I feel like I could be more of myself. But in the West Bank and in Yemen, because of security issues, when we rolled up to an event, we were rolling up in armored cars, and sometimes we'd have guards who were around, and that I don't like. I do feel like that creates automatically this sort of distance between you and the normal people. So that was a barrier I felt like we had to overcome. I'm glad that here we don't have those same kind of security concerns, and I can drive right up here in my own car and come and hang out with you guys.
Do you feel sometimes that you're worried about the politics that you cannot control? Like, for example, you have your own tasks, your own job as a diplomat representing the US, but whatever is happening between different countries in the region, you say, like, this is going to affect my life, this is going to affect like how comfortable I am and how I'm walking the street, and now I'm,
Yeah, well, I like to joke that everywhere I go, massive change tends to follow. So I went to Yemen in my first tour, and the Arab Spring breaks out. President Saleh ends up stepping down. Then I go to Jerusalem. I'm working for the consulate, so I'm dealing with the Palestinians. And then the U.S. Embassy moves to Jerusalem. The Palestinians cut off relations with us, essentially. Come here, Bouteflika steps down. Even when I was in Spain, they couldn't form a government when I was there. And they had a mini constitutional.
Was it the conflict between Barcelona and...
When I was there, yes, they had the separatist movement in Barcelona, but they couldn't form a government. I can't remember exactly why, but even when I was in Spain, they had trouble because I think Spain, I wasn't in the political section, but for some reason, the parties couldn't get together and form a unity government. They eventually did. But, we can't control any of that, and we can't foresee it. No one in U.S. government or in any government that I saw was able to really predict the Arab Spring, for instance, or even the protests and massive change that you had here in Algeria. So I think that, for our jobs and lots of other people who are working on the economy or in the nonprofit sector, part of, I think, what makes you effective at your job is being able to not necessarily predict, because I think that's very hard, but when things are changing, be able to change with them, to be flexible, to support them in interesting, creative ways.
Yeah, that's really cool. Problems follow Adam wherever he goes.
Hopefully solutions, too.
Yeah, I really hope so, too. So, before we started to record, we were talking about you being in Algeria during COVID-19. This like a really hard times. And I think that I'm really not sure about this, but I thought that maybe a lot of diplomats are like forced to stay in the country because there isn't much traveling, and even when there is traveling, it's few, and you need to take a lot of precautions. And so maybe probably a lot of diplomats in Algeria, Americans or non-Americans, are like staying in Algiers, and so they're forced to find fun things to do here, so to hang out and to discover places. I'm not sure if that was your case, but I know that like you've been going through Algiers, trying to find the nice places and the fun things that Algerians do, and I'm not sure if you're satisfied about what you have found so far. But could you tell us more about your experience regarding that?
Particularly during the
Yes,
Corona
yes.
times. Well, I mean, Corona was tough. Before, particularly as my job as cultural attaché, I was going all over the place, to musical concerts, to art openings, to dinner discussions, to lectures.
Soul King concert.
Went to the Soul King concert, all sorts of activities like that, and for good reason. That shut down for Corona, and we took and I personally take the precautions very seriously. And I wasn't, for the first 3 or 4 months, really, I wasn't seeing anybody outside of my wife and my 2 cats. So yeah, I mean, it takes a toll. I try not to complain too much, because I think the folks who, people are getting sick and people are dying, and alhamdulillah, no one in my family has gotten sick. And I also think that, the folks who have small children in the house or have older people they're taking care of, I think they just have it the hardest. The kids are running around, they can't go to school, they're trying to work at the same time. I think that was incredibly, incredibly stressful for those folks. And thankfully, it was just me, myself, my wife, and my 2 cats.
Yeah,
so we were able to entertain ourselves.
So whenever you're about to complain about something, you start thinking about the people who might be in worse situations than you, those who have kids, and you're like, oh, I have it better, I shouldn't complain.
Well, I mean, I work with him. My boss, for instance, he's got 2 small kids, and his wife works at the embassy too, and it's just impossible and very stressful. Because kids, particularly, they need to get out, they need to run around, they need to be socializing with other kids. We can hop on Zooms and socialize with our friends, but that's not how kids play, and kids need to play. And so the kids are stressed, and it makes the parents stressed. So I saw it in my colleagues, and I had colleagues also with family members who got sick, a couple of colleagues with family members who passed away at the embassy. So yeah, I mean, I've been able to manage.
Last time I said I was told that I caused a panic at the embassy because I interviewed Karen Rose, and 3 days after I got sick, and then I remember Wasila was like, you have to do the test in order to, for us to know if we're supposed to just isolate ourselves, or because I met you, Karen met you, and we weren't wearing the masks. It's a very weird time because we're not used to that type of interaction, to control each other all the time and worry all the time. And what's weirder actually is that I don't know anyone who was infected, and I also didn't infect anyone. So I'm just wondering how I got it. I don't know where I got this virus. And what's also funny is that by the beginning of the virus, I was the one who was most worried inside my family. I was telling them to do precautions all the time, make them watch videos of scientists talking about it. I was saying that this is serious sickness. You guys gotta clean, all the time and wherever. And nobody got sick except me. As if the virus is following, those people are afraid from it. I mean, I see people are just they are just messy, and they are just living just like how they were living before COVID-19, and nothing happened to them. And then people are taking extra precautions, and then they get sick. I just wonder how it's spreading.
Yeah, this is one bear of a disease. There's so many things about it that make it just so hard, I think, for us to combat. The fact that it does seem to spread incredibly easily. The fact that people don't get sick right away. Some people don't get sick at all.
Yeah, I think you hold it for 1 week, right?
I think so, or maybe 1 week, maybe 1.5 weeks. And so you have people walking around who have the disease and they don't know it, and they can spread it to others. So I think it's a disease that's very easy to spread and very hard to control. You have other diseases that are more dangerous, that kill you, but people get sick right away, and so it's easier to cordon them off. But with this particular disease, I don't see a really good answer for us until there's a vaccine, unfortunately. So I think the world has changed, and even I was reading a couple of days ago that even when a vaccine comes out, we don't know if it's going to be a vaccine like polio. You get the polio vaccine, and that's it. You're not getting polio. Or if it's going to be more like the flu vaccine, which is you get a vaccine and it protects you against some variants of the flu, but not other variants of the flu. So we'll see. I mean, in some ways, the world may never be the same.
Yeah. Would you get a vaccine once it's out?
Yes. Not the Russian vaccine. Unless it's fully tested by the by my government, which I trust, by the Centers and Disease Control. Then, I mean, even if it originated in Russia, I would still take it. But I would wait till there's really a vaccine that we know is safe, that scientists say is safe, that's been tested, and is known not to have any other side
Plenty of
effects.
people are so paranoid about the vaccines. They say we don't trust any government. Like, no, maybe they're testing us for something, I mean, it's just it's a really hard time. So during COVID-19, I noticed that you were participating in many online events and interacting with many young people. And you also work in the cultural department where you work on different exchange programs. And I'm not sure if you also contribute in interviewing people and checking their applications, and but you're around that environment. And so I just wonder if you were to give an advice, like to Algerian young people, based on what you noticed, based on what you noticed about their motivation and the way they think and their ambition and whatever, what would that be?
Yeah, so specifically for Algerians who are
Yes.
applying for programs.
Yes.
Yeah, so I do that. So I'm in charge of all of our exchange programs, all of our English language programs, all of our kind of arts exchanges, music programs. We do a lot in cultural preservation as well. And so, I typically review the professional programs, and then my colleague Salman does the youth and university programs. And I would say that applying for a program is difficult, particularly because I feel like writing a personal statement or an essay is something that's very common for us as Americans, and I think less common for other folks in the world, including Algerians. And what I think folks need to remember is I just got done reading the Fulbright Language Teaching Assistant. You go to year, you teach Arabic in an American university. I read 45 of those applications, 45. And so if you know that, and I read, I probably spend a couple minutes on each one. So we get these applications, they're like this, they're 50 pages. People are putting every certificate they've ever gotten in there. I'm not looking at the certificates. I don't even look at people's grades, to be honest. I look at what they write. I look at how they present themselves. And what people have to do is they have to figure out how to differentiate themselves from the other 45 people against whom, frankly, they're competing, because we're going to interview about 10 of them. So to do that, you've got to get specific. You've got to spend time. You've got to sit down. You've got to think, what do I want this program for specifically? And how does it fit within my story, as Wahib or Adam or whoever? How does it fit within my story, what I want to do that is specific and different from everybody else? Too many times I'm getting these applications, and in the interviews, same thing, where people are saying, I'd really love to go to America. I'd really love to increase my skills or my competences, which they always say, which we don't say in English. We say skills. Or I want
To boost their skills.
improve my English and, get to know American culture and, all these generalities. Well, those are all great goals, and they're all true. I know they're not, people aren't lying, but everybody's saying that. And what we really look for is somebody who says, I want to be an English teacher. I've noticed I've been teaching English for 5 or 6 years, and I've noticed in my classroom that really struggle to get students to communicate the language. They're too used to just memorizing words, and I want to go to the United States, and I really want to take a couple of classes in doing this. I want to bring that back to my classroom, and then maybe 5 years down the road, maybe create a training manual and help other people do this, or eventually I want to become an inspector. Or, however, we want to see that progression of, okay, here's a program, here's specifically what you want to get out of it and how you're going to apply it when you get back. It's got to go above and beyond the generalities. And that's the advice I give to everybody when they're talking about applying to our programs, or any program, really. I don't think it's much different if you're applying for programs, in other countries as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that people, maybe they don't have to have a very strict, well-defined plan for every single thing, but at least show me that you know what you want and you got at least a plan. You thought about it and exactly why you want to study this and what you will do when you come back. And you don't have to have like a really strict plan about all of this, but at least you have a plan, right?
Exactly. At least, more important than the plan is exactly what you said, Wahid, that they thought about it, and you can tell they thought about it. It's okay if they say, I'm not really sure 10 years down the line, but, here are a few options, but, here's really a gap in my skill, a specific gap that I want to learn, and then eventually, figure out how to apply it. Showing that they've thought about it and that that it's specific and different is really what's important.
Yeah, did you do any interviews? Did you interview any of those folks, the applicants?
I'm doing all my interviews next week for Fulbright Language Teaching Assistant and the Humphrey program as well. But I've done plenty of interviews in the past.
For Algerians?
For Algerians.
All right. What are some of the mistakes that they do the most, or maybe the ones that you spot very quickly and they're common?
Common mistakes
Yeah.
in an interview.
I had Hamdi Salami last time, who was working at the embassy once, and he said that we can tell very quickly when someone memorized what they were going to say. Like it appears the way they speak, because when you ask them something maybe that wasn't their mind, they just like freeze. I remember when I was going to have my Susie interview, there were many applicants who were actually shocked from the questions they had, and I was like, why? They said they didn't ask us about the application at all. We were preparing ourselves for the application, and then we went there, they were asking us about ourselves. What do you study? What do you want to do? They said, okay, we know what you wrote in the application, but now we want to know about you. We want to, and people didn't really expect that. So whatever they prepared themselves for, and sometimes people, they get off the line, they are asked something and they answer something else. So I'm just wondering about your experience in that regard.
Yeah, so I would say, I would go back to what I just said, because I still think that's the most important thing. You've got to get specific, you've got to show that you've thought about something. And it's okay in an interview too. Like if you get stumped with a question that you weren't expecting, you can say, that's a really good question. I've never thought about that. Can you give me 10 seconds to gather my thoughts? And then you start talking. It's much better than just immediately start spewing out an answer that ends up not being as good as what you might have come up with if you thought about it for a little bit. The other thing that people need to think about in interviews is the length of their replies. You don't want to be too short, but you also don't want to be too long. Sometimes you ask a question to somebody, and this maybe gets to your point about what they've memorized, and they start to answer the question, but then they go way off and start talking about all these other things. You only have like 10, 15 minutes. And so you want to make sure you get through all the questions that the interviewees or the interviewers are planning to ask. So think about that. Each answer, I think, should be, be concise, be specific but concise, in 45 seconds to a minute. If you feel yourself talking longer than that, I think you need to tone it down.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good advice for people who want to. When will the next exchange programs open? Is it in October?
Yeah, well, with Corona, everything's a little different.
Okay.
I think we'll still open up all of the programs that we usually open up in the fall, winter. but we'll have to see what Washington decides to do about our programs. But yeah, usually in October, November is when we open up the summer programs. So you'll see the Study United States Institute programs. You'll have the MEPI leadership programs, Tech Girls program, Tech Women program. A lot of those we open in November. If anybody wants, they can always just go to our website. We have all of our programs on our website, and it shows the dates that we usually open them. We have about 30 programs in total.
You're right. And speaking about the website, going to their website and checking. Do you sometimes, I'm not sure if you're running the social media account of Facebook and Instagram, but sometimes people send questions that they have already been answered, and then you're just wondering, you're like, always, go to our website. It's all there. It's just one click,
Yeah, and you'd be surprised. I'm very, on social media, I'm very findable, if that's a word. I'm the only person with my name in the world, and on social media I say that I work for the embassy, I'm a cultural attaché. You'd be shocked how many messages I get from random Algerians that say, what program is best for me? Or,
really?
Or, I get visa questions too, or,
I want to go to the US. How can I do that?
Exactly. Can you help me find a program? Guys, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go to the cultural attaché and basically say, the message you're sending with that is I'm too lazy to do my own research. It's all there on the website, like you said. And I'm thankful that I'm in the cultural section and that we've got Paul and his colleague Badis who go through and reply to all the comments on Facebook. Because you're right, it is a lot of the same stuff. And it's a lot of stuff that people could find if they spend.
Wait a minute, that's classified information. So it's not Khaled, it's not Paul who is answering the comments, it's actually Badis.
No, they both answer the comments.
Because Algerians are just surprised because of what Khaled knows, when the way he answers. It's very Algerian. They're like, how the hell could he know about all these words in such a short time?
So I think Khaled, when he replies, I think he signs, he'll say Khaled. You would be surprised how much. Khaled is one of the best Arab speakers and learners I think we have in the Foreign Service. And he didn't take. So I took when I was in Morocco. I had a full year of 5 hours a day, one-on-one Arabic. And I spent 3 hours a day with Fusha and 2 hours a day in Darija. So I had a whole year of 2 hours a day in Darija. Paul had no Darija. He just comes here, he listens, he really works at it, he watches TV, he listens to music. So you'd be surprised how much he's picked up of the slang. My slang is terrible. But Paul picks up a lot. But sometimes if you see something that's like, okay, there's no way an American wrote that. It probably was Badis. Badis is going through and responding as well.
That's really cool. It's really funny. It's like the funniest embassy right now on social media. And what Khaled does good isn't only speaking, but also it's like he emerged in the culture. Last time in the video where you guys talked about the best things that you liked in Algeria, he said the song of Arawi, كل واحد عنده حكاية. And I was like, a lot of people in my family don't even know the song, even though they are Algerians. He came here and he knows about all different stuff that maybe a lot of Algerians don't know about, even though they are cultural. And I noticed this, by the way, that when foreigners, non-Algerians come to work in Algeria, they like to experience the culture. They like to check Rai music. They like to eat cultural food. They go to those restaurants where there is cultural food and then Andalusi and music, in the background or something that comes from the Ottoman days. And then there are Algerians who live here and they don't do that. They're looking for something different. Maybe you find them that they listen to a lot of American songs. And Americans, when they come here, they don't want to listen to American songs. They want something different, I'm not sure if you're one of those guys who like to do that. Do you listen to American songs a lot in comparison with the songs of the country you're working at?
I still listen to a lot of American music, but I also listen to Algerian music. I don't think I've fully immersed. I think Paul and Salman have taken on the full immersion more.
They're on the next step.
More than I have.
Next level.
I still love my American music, but I do try to experience a little bit. I've been reading a lot of Algerian novels. I have been experiencing the culture, but I still love my American culture.
Yeah, when you're driving.
I wouldn't be a good cultural attaché if I weren't also immersed in American culture.
When you're driving your car in the highway, do you listen to American music?
I exclusively listen to podcasts
That's amazing.
when I drive.
That's really cool. What kind of podcasts?
Mostly American, although
Joe Rogan? No.
no, I don't listen to Joe Rogan. Nothing against him. I just don't listen to it. I like the stories. So I listen to This American Life, Radio Lab. Those are some of my favorites. Planet Money's really good for little economic stories. I also listen to podcasts in French and Spanish and Arabic. I haven't found a good Derja podcast. I would love to have any suggestions that you'd have for that. But for Arabic, there's a good one out of Jordan called Aib that I listen to. And French, there's one called I forget the name of it, but it's out of Paris.
Yeah. All right. Well, Adam, you worked as the press attaché in Jerusalem, and so you have some experience in social media. I'm just wondering if you have been following the worries of the people regarding the privacy of information. I think it was like a month ago or more maybe when Mark Zuckerberg and different CEOs of different social media companies like Twitter and they stood in front of the Congress, the American Congress, where they talked about like how their companies are protecting information. And I feel like more and more people in the world are getting more worried about their information. And especially when you're, for example, Googling something, let's say you're Googling Mercedes cars, for example, and then you go on Facebook and then you start getting those ads about Mercedes cars and you're like, what? I mean, I didn't allow Facebook to know about what I'm Googling about. But I don't know how they're working together. And some people, they're just suspecting that our information are being sold or something. And as someone who is experienced on social media, I'm not sure if you're following those events, and I would love if you could tell us what you think about if this worry is legitimate and
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate worry, and I think that these companies, in addition to other credit card companies, are amassing so much data about us that they then, turn into profit. I personally don't worry about it, just because I'm not a very private person, and I feel like I made the bargain when I signed up for these social media pages that they're going to have my data. And so it doesn't bother me, but I do think it's something that we should be concerned about. And I'm glad that the Congress is looking into it and looking into ways that it could be weaponized, and passing laws to make sure that, I think it's fair for them to use our data to sell to advertisers. That's how they make their money. I feel like that's the bargain that we all signed up for. But there are more nefarious ways of using people's data that, I would favor strong laws against that. And Europe has been thinking a lot about this too, and they have some stricter privacy laws that I find interesting. I'm not sure if I would support them or not. I'd have to look into the issue more. But I am glad, like I said, that.
Do you the argument that as long as I'm not doing anything wrong, then like I don't really care about if like my information are private or not?
I think in some ways it's a personal decision that everyone has to make. For me, the value of social media far outweighs the risks. So I'm happy to use it. I'm glad that people use it. I'm glad my friends are on it. But we are giving up our data.
What's some of the advantages that you think of social media?
Well, look at somebody in my job now. Being away from our friends and family is so much easier now than it used to be.
That's right. True.
Interacting with my family, I can call them, I can FaceTime them, I can Zoom them. I'm seeing what they're up to on Facebook and Twitter. So the constant communications, the ability that social media gives to people to gather, to find people who are like them, to form these types of communities. Even the ability to protest, to use social media to gather people for democratic purposes. there's also a lot of danger. There's the disinformation. There's also the danger of bringing people together that maybe shouldn't be brought together, who might be espousing violent ideologies and whatnot. So, there's a lot of risk. It is dangerous, but I do think that ultimately it outweighs the good outweighs the bad.
But it's the beginning. We don't know yet, I guess. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. Did you watch The Hater on Netflix?
No, I don't.
But did you hear about it?
Mm-mm.
All right, so it's actually a Polish movie where they talked about. I mean, it just expresses and prescribes this idea of how social media can be really dangerous to. The thing is that what they actually put is a guy who was really into social media. Like he's someone who's a nerd who uses Facebook and Twitter and Instagram a lot. And then he was hired by a company where they actually told him that your job now is to try to bring down a woman who sells makeup online. And then what he did was like creating those several accounts, and then he started a hashtag against that makeup, and then making comments and with different profiles and with real pictures and everything, saying that, oh, I bought your makeup and then now my face is red and it's not working or whatever, and I got sick. And then when people read those comments, real people, when they read those comments, they get worried. Oh, so a lot of people are complaining about this product. No, I'm not going to buy that. And then after a week or two, the sales just decreased. They went down, and she started complaining. And then that company that hired him were proud of him, but they said that, okay, great job, but now the next mission is we want you to ruin the reputation of a political figure who's doing a campaign in order to become president. And then he started looking him up and creating rumors and wherever, and that's what we call there is a name for that. In Arabic, we call it dubab electroni. I think in English is boots, I guess.
I don't know what it's called in English.
Yeah, but you see this phenomenon, I think it's also increasing, where people cannot verify the comments and accounts all the time. So they're looking at the number of likes, they're looking at what the comments are saying, and then they make a decision if they like this person or they're not, if they're going to buy from this business, they're gonna engage with it or not. Even those comments could be really untrue, could be really misleading. So yeah, I think it's the beginning. Facebook is also getting so huge, man. It's changing elections. I'm not sure, you're American, so probably you've been following with the news in the US about the Russian, interrupting in the American elections or wherever. And also that's also very interesting regarding Facebook. The way Facebook works, the way the algorithm works is that it also feeds you with wherever you like. And so, for example, if you have a right-wing ideology and you like a lot of right-wing ideas, and then even the pages that are suggested to you on Facebook are only the pages of the right wing. The friends that are suggested to you, recommended for you to add, they're also right. And then so your environment is only with people who agree with you. And then when you spend long time around this in this environment, you think that's the truth, that's what that is. There isn't another side of the story. And then you got people from the left who are also the same thing. And so when they don't get to meet like we do in real life and talk about our differences, and then you can see the other point of view, then you don't get to change, and then you become very rigid and very ideologically extreme, extremist. And so is this something that you notice? Is this something you're worried about?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I do think that social media and this ability to find like-minded people has a polarizing effect. So I think people who might have been, ideologically slightly inclined towards a particular viewpoint, and we could talk about left and right politically, but also, we could talk about religious extremism or other forms of extremism, I feel like can get pulled in that direction. And that is dangerous. And it's very, very hard, as you said, to combat. People create these new accounts, they pop up. And related, I think that, going back to another point that you made about, taking people down takedowns on social media.
Cancel culture, is that what it's called?
Yeah, I do not use the term cancel culture anymore. Because cancel culture means so many different things to so many different people. It's become one of these terms that's so emotive and has such a strong connotation and not a clear meaning that I don't use it anymore. What I say is that I am somebody who believes very strongly in the free exchange of ideas. And I think social media is great for that. I love getting into discussions with people, particularly on Twitter, and seeing viewpoints that are interesting or different or different from my own. And I've had my mind changed by people. And I think we should encourage that. But I think sometimes what you see is people express an opinion that's either just wrong, or somebody doesn't like it, or it really is beyond the pale. It's an opinion that people shouldn't have. And instead of trying to make somebody see the light or change somebody's mind, there are fringes, I feel like, that want to drastically affect that person's life in negative ways. And that's where I draw the line. Except for, obviously if somebody's a white nationalist or, a race, that's just very clear, like Ku Klux Klan type way, yeah, okay, take that person down. But if somebody makes a comment that isn't, beyond that line, I don't think we should call for their jobs. Even if it's a comment that's racist, a lot of people are racist without knowing it, and a lot of people make mistakes, and there should be consequences. I'm not against consequences, but this idea that we should banish people from society is something that I take issue with. But that's not what everyone understands to be cancel culture. Sometimes people understand it just as you can't criticize me. No, of course.
Yeah.
So the whole term,
Great
I think we
point.
should throw out the term, and we should really just talk about what we think are appropriate consequences to problematic speech. So, yeah, I do think that's an issue, and you hear about people getting fired for one bad tweet, and I'm usually against that.
Yeah.
Great point, man. All right, so thank you so much for coming to our podcast, The Good Folks. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Adam, we'd love to have you again some other time.
Anytime, in Corona times, we're not holding events, so I got time in my hands.
All right. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, just thanks for having me. I think you guys do such a wonderful job here, and it really is a pleasure, and I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for today, guys. Have a good day. Bye.